Thank you for tutoring with Literacy Network. This training will focus on working with your advanced student. So first, let's talk about getting started, preparing yourself for success. I think one of the most important lessons that we can teach our advanced level learners is to take responsibility for their own learning. So many of our advanced learners have the goal of going on to Madison College or another degree program. They're really going to need to learn study skills, how to track progress, how to set goals, things like that. So ways that you can teach your learner these skills are practice monthly or semester based goal setting. Talk with your learner about the difference between short-term goals, the goals that they want to focus on maybe this year, and long-term goals. What goals do they have for 2, 3, 4 years down the road? Another really important part of goal setting is tracking the steps to achieving that goal. So, for example, your learner might say, I want to be a medical interpreter. Okay, so what steps does your learner need to complete in order to achieve that big picture long-term goal? A lot of times our students need help, our advanced level students need help choosing realistic goals in realistic timelines. So if your student says, my goal is to become a medical interpreter, then really thinking about the things your student does well now, what your student needs to focus on, and helping your learner to pinpoint the exact steps. So they need to maybe focus on medical language, maybe enroll into the ESL CNA program at Madison College, which requires a level 5, I believe, on the ESL Compass. So all of those steps really need to be pinpointed for your student, and then you can ask your student, when do you think you can focus on this goal, or when do you think you'll achieve that? When can you take the ESL Compass to find out what your level is? When can you talk to an advisor to apply for the program? This will really help students realize that if they take control of their learning, if they continue with their classes, that they can really achieve the goals that they have. It also puts their lessons in perspective. A challenge with the advanced level student is really allotting time for conversation and time for a focused lesson regarding the student's goals. So it's very easy to come to your meeting, your class with your advanced student and spend 2 hours in very fun, interactive conversation. That's great because your learner is improving confidence, improving fluency, but you really want to make sure that you are also focused on the educational goals that your student has. Your student is at the point where they really could progress. They could get a different position at work. They could get into Madison College. They have a lot of opportunities open to them, and your lessons should really really focus on achieving those goals. So maybe you can talk with your student. This is one way to teach your student how to take responsibility for their education. Ask your student within a 2-hour lesson, how much time does your student want to study, practice conversation, and how much time does your student want to focus towards achieving their goals? Make sure that you come up with a time that both of you can agree to, and then reinforce it. Make sure that the two of you are working together to enforce the guidelines that you created together. Gauge understanding with your advanced level student. It's not as difficult as with lower level students, but you still want to make sure that your student is really receiving the language and it's cemented for future recall. Teach back is a great way to do this. So, for example, if you read an article on health, you would, after you finish the article, you would ask your student, so I want to make sure that you understood the article, or I want to make sure I did a good job explaining. If you go home and tell your spouse about this article, what would you tell him or her? Or if you go home and tell your child about how they can be healthier, what would you say to them? So teach back is really giving your learner the opportunity to say something that they've just learned using their own language. They get the practice of communicating, of taking a language that they processed and spitting it back out. And then you get the ability to see what they understood, what they didn't understand. Also, open-ended questions are really, really important for the advanced level student. So anytime that you're reading an article, you're having a conversation, ask as many open-ended questions as you can. Where did you go? When did you go? Why did you do that? What did you say? How did your supervisor respond? This is a great way to practice a variety of different grammar tenses within one conversation as well. So if you're talking about an incident that happened at work, you can say, what happened? What did you do? What did your coworker do? Do you think it'll be better tomorrow? So you're giving a lot of practice incorporating different tenses, different vocabulary with these open-ended questions. And that's a lot of what your advanced student is going to need. Is going to be able to fluently and automatically use vocabulary, use different verb tenses within a conversation. Speaking. So we talked about conversation a little bit. Conversation will probably make up a large part of your lessons because your advanced level student has the capability, first of all, of conversing, probably has a lot of questions that they're going to want to ask about things that they hear at work or in the community. And fluency, this is a time when we really do want to develop fluency and automaticity. I do caution you, however, to make sure that you set aside the time of the lesson that's going to be spent on conversation, and then make sure that you're dedicating the rest of the lesson to language skills that will achieve the learner's goals. And you want to decide whether the conversation is a means to practice grammar. So maybe you're studying the present perfect. I have studied English for 5 years. And you want to practice that in an authentic manner. You can do that during conversation. So ask your student questions. Have you ever, as a fun game, have you ever gone scuba diving? Have you ever eaten lobster? Have you ever gone to Wisconsin Dells? So you're using the grammar that you've studied within conversation. If you are using conversation to practice grammar, then you will want to focus your error correction on only that grammar concept. So if your student says, my daughter, he goed to Wisconsin Dells 2 times this year, the error that you want to correct is has gone. Oh, your daughter has gone to Wisconsin Dells 2 times this year. So you're really making sure that you're focusing on the grammar concept. If you're practicing conversation to develop a relationship with your student or to build fluency, then the only errors you'll want to correct are errors that change meaning. Other than that, you'll want to just let your student talk, because a lot of building fluency is really building confidence. Then you always want to make sure that you're discussing appropriate topics with your student. So the best way to do that is find out what your student is interested in. They may have different interests than you have, but you want to really be incorporating the language that your student hears and practices on a daily basis. So find out who they speak English with, where do they speak English, what interests do they have, what hobbies, what things do they want to what events do they want to participate in the community, things like that, and really try to gear your conversations towards those. The advanced stage, though, is a level where you can start bringing in other things, kind of broadening your students' horizon. I know a lot of our students have benefited greatly from tutors that encourage them to get out into the community. So you may, every lesson, you may have a short conversation with your learner about a community, kind of a Madison treasure that we have. So maybe, have you ever gone to Allen Gardens? Have you ever gone to Olbrich Gardens? Have you taken your kids to the zoo? Things like that, and encouraging your student to do events in the community, to do activities in the community, and then you can use those in future lessons as conversation practice. And your advanced student is becoming more of a member of the community, feeling at home in the community, and practicing language in different contexts. I really like dialogues. I like dialogues for all different levels of students, especially for advanced students, because dialogues they teach the appropriate language to a given situation. So for example, if your student tells you that he's having a hard time communicating errors to a supervisor, you can write a dialogue about that. Find out where your student works, what kind of job they do, and what kind of errors they make. And then you can write the dialogue based on that, and you can include things that we would normally incorporate in our speech. So, what's up? Or, hey, I'm sorry, but I made a mistake. Or try to be more careful next time. So phrases that are really appropriate to given situations. I like to write the dialogue and then record it and have my student listen to it first without seeing the written dialogue. Then I like to ask my student oral questions about it. So where were the people? What happened? Who was talking? When the man said this, what did the woman say in response? What was the problem? What was the solution? Find out what your student understood. When I'm making dialogues for advanced students, I do incorporate a lot of colloquial speech, and I try to make sure that the speed is normal. You never want to frustrate your student, but remember that you can listen to the dialogue over and over and over and over again. The dialogue is a great way for your student to get authentic practice for a conversation that they probably will have at the store, at the clinic, at work. So I would say try to make the speed pretty authentic. And as you do dialogues, vary the people who you're recording. Make sure to record a variety of different people. Recording a dialogue takes maybe 10 seconds. Most people, I think, are happy to participate. I always record them on my smartphone. Very easy to do that and play back. I've also had students who have asked me if we can say the dialogue together and they can record it on their phone so they can listen to it later before they have the conversation that we're practicing. So I first let the student listen to the dialogue. The second time they listen, I will give them the written dialogue, but I'll make sure that phrases are missing. So they need to, the second time they're listening for certain information, and they're writing in the missing words, the missing phrases, the missing information. Then we'll practice the dialogue a lot. I will be one person, the student will be the other person. We'll switch roles. That really leads well into creating a dialogue based on the student situation. So saying this dialogue was, this employee was telling the supervisor about a mistake they made. Now let's write a dialogue, you and I'll be your supervisor, and you can tell me about a mistake you made. And they're really drawing in from real life experience to create this dialogue with you during class. And this will be something that they can leave the lesson and really use. So spend a lot of time on this. Pronunciation, a lot of our advanced students are very interested in improving their pronunciation. The one thing that we want to ask is, what is the goal of pronunciation? It's not that your student sounds exactly like you or sounds exactly like a native English speaker. The goal of pronunciation is that your student feels confident when they speak and that people in the community understand what they're saying. So I always explain to my students that pronunciation takes time. So when an adult learns a new pronunciation, they're retraining the muscles in their mouth. So the muscles in their tongue, the muscles, their mouth muscles. It's a process. It requires practice every day. It requires a lot of repetition. So let's practice. For Spanish speakers especially, the Y and the J are very difficult words or very difficult sounds. So I will often start a lesson and I'll write yellow on the board, and then I'll write jello on the board. And I'll tell people, this is my tongue, okay? When I say the sound yellow, 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 my tongue, the back of my tongue goes up against the roof of my mouth, and the tip of my tongue is down, resting against the bottom front teeth. Yellow, 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 yellow. When I say the word jello, jello, the bottom of my tongue is relaxed, and the tip of my tongue is up against my top front teeth. Jello, jello, jello. I also really like to give students mirrors so that they can see themselves as they're pronouncing or as they're saying sounds. So, for example, the B and the V. I tell my students, say very, very, very. If you cannot see your top teeth in the mirror, then you're not saying very, you're saying berry. that helps a lot. It helps students to visualize where their muscles should be and to actually see what they're producing. I recommend that my students practice every day in front of the mirror, 10 to 15 minutes a day, but that's really what it takes to change the muscles in your mouth, to master pronunciation. Listening. Listening is a key component for the advanced student. Many times they are able to express what they want to express. They're able to they know what they want to say, and they can say it pretty well. But listening can be a bit trickier. So to improve listening comprehension skills, you want to focus a lot on listening for meaning. So your student probably, if ever, maybe will never understand everything that they hear, everything their coworker says, everything that they hear at the store. But you want to teach them how to listen for what they need. I think dialogues are a great way to do that, or recordings. And you're listening to a recording, you're playing a recording for your student, and you're giving them specific information to listen for. So if they are listening, one thing I like to do with students is have them call the clinic or have them call the movie theater, because that's always going to be a recorded message. So you can, before you do the activity, you can say, all right, you're going to call this phone number. It's the Star Cinema. I want you to find out the show time for this movie. And then I want to know what the price for a child and the price for an adult is. So your student is calling, they're getting authentic practice because they're calling the Star Cinema number, and they know what information they are listening for. They're not going to understand everything, but they're getting a lot of practice listening for the information that they need. I very often, when students want to focus on speaking and understanding at work, I'll record announcements from the supervisor. And I'll make sure to include tricky language that I think supervisors will really say. So maybe, hey, listen up, folks, colloquial speech. And then I'm giving the student specific information. So what time does production start? What machine are you running today? They'll listen to the announcement, and they've got something that they need to listen for, even if they don't understand everything. This builds confidence when they're actually listening to coworkers, supervisors, people on the phone. As I said, dialogues, I think, are a great way to do this. So I highly recommend recruiting some friends or family to record some dialogues so that you're allowing the student to listen. I also really like having the students participate in the dialogues. The advanced level students, I think, benefit a lot from hearing their own speech. So one thing I do with my students is we will role play, and I'll record us role playing in a situation, and then I'll play it back. And the students, as they listen to themselves, they can say, oh, I made that mistake, or oh, I said that. And they also hear what they're doing well. Vocabulary. Vocabulary will comprise a portion of your lesson. Your advanced level student probably has a pretty good command of basic vocabulary, of the vocabulary that they encounter on a day-to-day basis. What you're going to want to ask your student is, what do they need to focus on? What are their career goals? What area are they less sure of? So if they're unsure of going to the doctor, maybe you want to focus on health-related vocabulary. If they want to learn computers, focus on computer-related vocabulary. So something you may be focusing more on specialized vocabulary with your advanced level student. I highly encourage against using translation. Imagine if you had a list of words, you want to learn German, and you've got a list of words in English, and you've got a list of words in German. You were to say the word in English, say the word in German a few times, go through the list, turn the list over. If you recall any words at all, you probably will. It won't be a great number. It's for adults. We really have to work our minds in order to recall what we've learned. So it's a much more proficient way to introduce new words through illustrations, or actually showing the object, or acting the words out, because the mind has to work harder to grasp the meaning. Your mind is making connections, creating pictures, and it's really giving something to, in the future when they hear the word, it gives an illustration to go back to. Another key component to vocabulary lessons with advanced students it's going to be really important that you teach your student how to figure out the meaning of difficult or unfamiliar words. So do this a few different ways. Teaching prefixes and suffixes, teaching about root words, and then teaching your student how to use context clues. And you'll want to make sure that you're doing that both written and listening. So you'll want to use recorded dialogues or have yourself read aloud an announcement with a couple difficult words and have the student use context clues. So what was the information I said first? What was the information I said after that word? What do you think that word might mean? For written, if your student wants to improve their understanding of healthcare related vocabulary, go to a clinic or hospital and grab some brochures and help the student to understand, using context clues, using prefixes and suffixes, how they can determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. This is a key skill that our advanced students need to master. Another skill that I think is very important for advanced level students are the ability to use synonyms and antonyms. So we serve a lot of students who are in levels 4, 5, or 6 at Madison College, and that's one of the difficulties that they have is they're not able to describe unfamiliar terms or to talk about define new words in English. So teaching your student an activity I like to do is to show a list of difficult words and ask your student to decode the words using prefixes, suffixes, root words, the skills that you've previously studied, and then ask your student to tell you another word that they know to describe this term. Or what is the opposite of this term? Because a lot of our advanced level students, they know what they want to say, but maybe they can't draw upon the exact word. So they need to become proficient in describing what they want to say using the language that they do have. This is a fun activity. It's fun to do this with students, and I would highly recommend that you find out what your students' goals are. So should you focus more on health-related vocabulary, or do they want to be a mechanic, things like that, and really have fun with the vocabulary within the context that is meaningful to the student. If their goal is to go to Madison College, then you will want to pay attention to vocabulary that's more academic. We've got a lot of resources in our library for improving academic vocabulary, so definitely check those out. Grammar. So your advanced level student should have a basic understanding or an understanding of basic grammar. I think a lot of times our advanced students need most practice in using the grammar that they already know fluently in impromptu conversation. So when you are incorporating grammar into your lesson, you're going to want to ask, where is my student using this grammar? What task will my student be completing with this grammar? Your student should always be doing most of the talking within a grammar lesson. That can be difficult because it's very natural to put teacher hat on and lecture about a grammar topic, but that's really not preparing the student to use it. So I like to introduce grammar situationally. So maybe I would come into class and I would say, hey, have you ever gone scuba diving? Start by have you ever, and the student will begin by answering. It's kind of your hook, and then you can say, okay, well, this is what we're going to study today, and you may provide a very basic grammar chart. So we're going to talk about how to describe an action that starts in the past and continues through the present. So that's probably all of the explanation you need. What you want to focus more on is the actual use of the grammar concept. So that's how I would introduce the present perfect. I would come to class, I would start a little conversation using the present perfect, and then I would say, well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to study how to describe actions that start in the past and continue through through present. And I may illustrate that with a timeline. I really like to use timelines when you get into the perfect tenses. Then you're going to want to provide a lot of opportunities for your student to use the grammar. They don't need a lot of explanation. They really need to practice using the grammar. So I like to role play a lot. I like to provide a situation and where we can role play an authentic language situation. So if we are practicing the past tense, maybe we're in a clinic appointment and the doctor is asking about an accident that happened in the past, or a hospitalization that was in the past. Or if we're at work, the supervisor is asking about a mistake that was made yesterday. So how you do that is you will, a dialogue is a great way to model it. So maybe you write up a dialogue of a situation using the grammar concept that you want to focus on. The student listens to the dialogue, you work with that for a little while, and then you give little scenarios. So I always like to come up with 5 to 6 scenarios, lay them face down, and we take turns choosing them. The scenario will have the situation. So you are at the store, you need to make a return because this shirt didn't fit. And then the student is the customer, you are the cashier, and you role play, you have a conversation. It's important to know that you're only going to correct the correct errors that focus on the grammar that you're studying. So your student may make other grammatical errors, and that's fine, let those go. Because what role playing does is it gives you the option to practice grammar in an authentic situation, but it also gives the student a way to build confidence within a situation that they see in their everyday lives. So if you are practicing a return, choose the grammar concept that you're going to correct and stick with that. Okay? All right. Reading. Reading and writing are oftentimes the most challenging topics for our advanced level students. We serve a lot of students who have gotten a lot of practice speaking and listening at work or with their children or just being out in the community, but reading and writing are generally the two of the skills that don't get as much practice within students' daily lives. So the way that you teach daily reading and writing is really going to depend on the goals of your student. If your student is interested in pursuing a degree at Madison College or another higher education degree, you're going to want to focus on academic reading skills. So previewing for information, skimming a written text to find the important information, learning to identify the main idea, the supporting ideas, using context clues to define new vocabulary. This is going to be very, very important to prepare your student for success at Madison College or another university or college. And your student, the hardest part for them is when they take tests or when they do reading assignments at school. It's going to be difficult because they're not going to understand every word. So you really need to focus on teaching your student to cope with that, to use the skills, previewing, skimming, context clues, to complete assignments, to complete tests without understanding every single word. That takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. We have a lot of texts in our library that offer lessons on teaching study skills, reading skills, and then timed practices, things like that. So I definitely encourage you, if your student's goal is to pursue a degree, that you come to the library and check out the texts that we have on improving academic reading skills. If your student is not interested in achieving a higher degree, but they want to be able to move up at work, become a supervisor at work, help their kids with homework, anything like that, then you're going to want to find out exactly what they're reading now, what they want to read, and what they want to do with the things that they're reading. And then you want to bring those materials into class. So, for example, if your student wants to be more proficient at the doctor. Maybe they have a chronic disease they're working to manage. Go to the clinic and get some written materials, get some brochures, get some printouts on health, and teach your student to read for information, or read to do. So give them a task. If your student has diabetes, get a brochure on diabetes and ask your student to skim the brochure and write 3 different ways that they can take care of their health. If your student wants to help their kids more with homework, find out what grade their children are in. You may even ask the kids if you can take a look at a textbook they use in school or their favorite chapter book series, something like that, and you can bring those into the lessons. So you're really bringing the materials that your student is going to see on a daily basis. You're bringing those to class. That's building proficiency in what they need to read and confidence, so they're having success in their daily lives. Writing is very similar. Writing is oftentimes the most difficult skill to master in English, but again, you'll want to find out what your student's goals are. So if your student wants to go to the university or to Madison College, then you're going to want to focus on academic writing. So that's going to be composition. How do you write a correct sentence? How do you write a correct paragraph? What's the correct format for a memo, for a letter, for a note, for a paper, for an email? So those will be things that you want to study for more of an academic goal. If your student doesn't want to pursue a higher degree, then find out what they need to write. Do they help their kids with homework? Do they need to write accident reports at work or time off requests? Do they need to submit maintenance requests in writing at their apartment? Find out what they need to write and bring those materials to class. Offer your student authentic practice in the writing that he or she needs to do on a daily basis. I think phonics is also something very important to focus on for students with either academic or non-academic goals. Phonics is important because it's really allowing students to become familiar with the different sounds in English. So it's working on pronunciation, it's working on reading, it's working on writing. I always start with the short vowels. I always start with the and then go to I, and I like to begin with a magnetic board and then have the different letters, magnetic letters, on the board. I'll first put the vowel on the whiteboard and make the sound and then tell students how their mouths should be, kind of like you're smiling. Then I'll add a consonant, at. Then I'll add a consonant at the front, cat. Then maybe I'll change the C to a P, pat. So what you're showing the student is that the short vowel sound always stays the same no matter what the consonant on either side is. A lot of repetition, a lot of dictation is important to master phonics. So I like to dictate first, write the word pat, write the word cat, write the word hat. Then I like to have the student dictate to me, and I will write exactly what the student says so that if they're saying something incorrectly, they're able to see the error that they're making. It's easier to correct an error when you can actually visualize it. Thank you very much for tutoring with us. I look forward to seeing you in the second day of our training. If you have any questions regarding this training, please write them down and bring them to our second training day. Thank you.